topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the host and their guests, and not those of W4CS Radio, its employees, or affiliates. W4CS makes no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening to the Cancer Support Network on W4CS.com.
Hi everyone, it's Arti, and we are on another show live with you today, and hope you're doing really, really great. And we are having some technical difficulties with Dahria, our co-host, getting on, but hopefully she's able to do that. And can you all believe that we're almost in? Oh, there she is! How are you?
I'm finally in there. I'm wonderful. Honestly, it's been a crazy day, as you can see, but I am here and trying to get us fully in order for this moment with each other to talk about big stuff.
Oh, yes. Nice. I love your shirt. I today am dressed down, but I'm wearing a Be Kind shirt. I have 3 of these when I teach my yoga class.
That is amazing. So that's the one thing about you is in reference to yoga, peaceful meditation. That is definitely your lead. I always am inspired by you just keeping on that. I know I've tried dabbled, so it's exciting to see you still in the moment. But yes, this morning, unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to do any of that kind of even walking.
Oh, yeah.
Which I'm supposed to do 2 miles a day.
You're at 2 miles a day?
Well, I'm at the 2 mile a day. I'm supposed to be doing at least 2 miles 3 times a week for the next 6 months. So, yes, check in later.
Nice. So how do you hold yourself accountable?
Yeah, so my dog, it's amazing. I actually have a new little puppy that's about 12 months old, and I realized that he was placed in my life clearly to motivate me to get up in the morning and move. And so the accountable is feeling bad that the days I try not to, looking at him. Granted, they are probably needed to be something more than that, but I realized when I was a kid how much having an animal, a pet, a companion, how much it really meant to me. And I hadn't realized how much until probably when I went to college and didn't have that an animal and went through stuff. And it was like, oh, who do I cry my tears on, that kind of thing. So he's definitely the one that keeps me accountable. At the same time, I think I'm one of those people when the doctor says kind of I'm like, oh yeah, I guess we got to do, so thus far, that's it. How about you?
I need accountability in my life because here's the thing. When I teach the classes to the kids, then especially this summer when I did a couple, it held me accountable to making sure I did it. But right now, I'm having a really hard time with my morning routine and getting back in. So I want to remind everyone, it is a constant. I love people who've been disciplined their whole lives, but I don't know if they always share that there's a period that they're not disciplined. I don't know, but I just want to remind everyone that it is a consistent cycle of trying to eat well, sleep well, be well, right? It's not one of those things that you can say, oh my God, I have a plan because I used to have this plan and then all hell breaks loose and then you have to start over. So
For sure. And I think it's getting it into that lifestyle routine that is really the hard part, and the sticking to. And when things change, adapting.
Yes, huge. When things change, which as we all know, it does change a lot, and then something comes over big time, and But Daria, talking to you out loud about this, it would be really cool to see more of people who have consistent routine. A lot of it is also because they have faced a health challenge and then they're like, I have no choice, such as you saying, okay, I have to do 2 miles a day. My pet is here to help me to stay accountable, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Do you think
Yeah.
that's part
Oh,
of
that's
it?
exactly. Oh, that is all of it. That is all of it, to be honest with you, because I think that when we're hitting those tough times, these reality checks come into play. And I think that's even part of even why, you and I work so hard to get people to come to moments like this to have a conversation about hard talk stuff, but also just you know what I mean? And how you can better you in multitudes of different areas in your life. And so I think it's really people just stopping, taking a pause moment, right? When we're talking about that aspect of things, but then also taking this time to shine a light on some of the things that in our lives, you know what I mean, are coming upon us or that we're causing, right? And then to at the same time now also try to address them in some form, but in small increments and not feeling so bad about, not making these huge changes. So I think it's been one of those things where trying to really put these like can't get around it, got to do it things in play. I remember in college, I actually made it so my college was here, my apartment was here, right, and the gym was in between. I made it so I could not go by the gym unless I went in, and it could be like cardio that morning and then maybe some weight training in the afternoon, right? Granted, you got to warm your body up or whatever. This is before my multiple sclerosis, clearly, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it's not that you can't take those small increments at different times of the day, which would be really important. So to
Totally.
like try to find those ways to force yourself to do it until it becomes an actual habit. That's another thing. Like we get so mad and we haven't even given it time to really set in, and they're talking about all these time frames like 30 days, 60 days, to actually create a habit. So
Yeah, you're
definitely
right. The
something to
30,
work on.
I always tell my clients the 30, 60, 90 have, right? 30 to like start doing it, 60 to like,
Yep.
and it's all related to brain science, 60 to kind of be around and 90 for it to be there. And I'm like, well, hello, I kind of did that, but then what happened? So then you are realizing that
Life.
the
Yep.
monkey brain is always part of the equation. And then
Definitely.
life,
And
life,
and life.
yes,
Don't
life.
get it wrong. You know what I mean? Life in itself is very important to take into consideration because it's gonna have its pulls and
Totally.
tangles and ups and downs and all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, how are we riding it out? And so
Absolutely.
I think being a little bit, you know, easy on yourself
I
with
agree.
how you also approach kind of taking this like your life, by reins kind of deal. I always even say that like saying and doing anything just cold turkey, you know, is a hard reality, and at the same time, if you can do it, right? But in reference to moderation, in my mindset, right? Let's just get to where moderation comes to play, right? Where it's, and then from there, getting to bigger. So that's why I'm even starting, small in references walking scenario. You know what I mean? Like first day I was like, let me just do one in and one out, and now it's two in and two back. So day by day, I'm not
Day by
running it, I'm jogging lightly, the dog's pulling, whatever the case may be. I'm getting through.
No, absolutely. And I am glad we're talking about this because it is a mod of and actually talking about it with you out loud, I'm reminding myself now in this moment that really it can be that the time has come for a little bit of a modification for the morning, right? Like,
You
and
got to change.
I also want to remind everyone that there's personality types. Some of us need more structure and routine, and some of us need, you got to figure, and the seasons, right? You have to account for the seasons of you.
Yep, yep,
And
definitely. And sleep time,
oh,
I'm
yeah.
being honest with you in reference to that. That is very, very big, because I think the sleep time that people are overlooking a lot in life, and how much it can affect how you function on a day to day, whether
True.
if something as simple as your memory, or additionally, just feeling like an easy flow throughout the day. So
I
I
agree with
totally
you.
agree.
We're finally actually doing a lot of research, and people are very aware of like nutrition and food,
Yeah,
but they're not aware of sleep, and we're really taking it for granted. And I'm like a culprit too, right? Such
totally
a
have been
culprit.
that forever, and I tried to figure out when in life it started. And there was like a lot going on at one point in time, obviously, with the diagnosis, the depression, all that kind of stuff, that sleepless nights type of deal. But then realizing how even there was some aspects of the MS or medications that were causing this longer duration of not being able to get down. And then me just putting stimuli in play, like, whoa, let me look at this and do this and put this in play. And it's like, okay, what is it, 2:45? So it's definitely one of those things you got to get a rein on, but deciphering what it is, and I think some people take for granted of, you always just think it's like just you staying up, but it could be your thoughts, it could be your mind, it could be the mindset that you're
And our
in the
phones,
mode. Hello.
right? A lot of people will play, you'll play a game that you want to play, but then remember that the phone has already got all that light happening, plus the dopamine hit, plus the
Oh,
fact that if you're
definitely.
playing a game, you're gonna want to keep going. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And I have a husband who has insomnia as well. So it's like pushes on.
no,
It's that pushing
yeah,
on to one each other, and we're just
that's
like bouncing
right.
back and forth with it. Yeah. So that's another thing, is trying to get him to recognize his. So, when you bring two together, it's always two trying to figure
Yes,
out, how this one is supposed to work.
I
And I
know.
think that definitely has been an example for me, because when I try to recognize it, he's not on the same page. And I think that's a lot in reference to having a partner, is making sure that, but it's the communication,
It
knowing
is
that, like,
true.
okay, this is what I took a whole sleep class. They put I even brought him into the class. She was like, you know what, we need to put you in the class. That's how he really was like, oh, it is an issue. And he started to be respectful, but then it's been one of those things where it's like, get in, slide in the bed. Maybe I just want to put on the TV for a second, right? We're off of the football game in the bedroom, so that was good.
So
Not
I
screaming.
actually, speaking of TVs, and I brought in research from wherever it was. That's
Mhm.
I told my husband about, like, you're not supposed to really, if you can, have a TV in the bedroom. But now, like,
That's what they say.
so we didn't for a long time. But sometimes I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have a TV in your room? But a lot of people talk about the fact that it's just going to be another stimulus, right?
Yeah, it's definitely another stimulus. And I think with me, with my MS and being tired and the bed calling me, I can find reasons through the TV of why I could go a little bit earlier and still do
Totally.
what I need to do. You know what I mean? So, yeah, definitely.
So Daria, today, you and I were talking about topics, and I was saying something really that's occurring lately, because everybody's asking how the kids doing, because anyone who knows anything about September, if you have kids who are in college, um, or if they're even middle school, high school, elementary, the question that everyone asks is, how are the kids doing? And so, uh, in reference to themes, here I did a presentation on back to school support, and then that's why when you and I were thinking of what is a meaningful topic, because we're kind of trying to keep to present times as well. Why
Hmm.
not discuss ways to help support families during when they're really wrapping their brain around support?
For sure, for sure. I think this is a great topic at this time. I know in reference to the kids here in this local area, it's the parents are always trying to figure out where to start, where to go. So,
So true, right? Um, and so I just want to start by acknowledging the fact that parenting, I would say Oprah specifically chose not to do it for a reason, but I'm so glad she did that because she understood what a tall order, like she knew. And
Right,
no offense,
exactly. That commitment,
right? That commitment. And no
sacrifice, that
offense to anyone.
time.
Yeah. No offense to anyone who's been like, oh my gosh, I wish I had done this. I'm not trying to say, I'm just saying I'm grateful for someone in the public eye who admits that there's a reason they did not want to have children.
Right.
But it is a tall order, and sometimes we always, I don't know about you, Daria, I feel like we accounted for the infant toddler years, like, and then everybody prepares you to just, you're going to have sleepless light nights and, and then they grow up, right? And then it'll be,
Yeah.
but every stage, and now we know, has its own
Yeah.
ups and
Package.
downs and challenges, right?
Yep. Yep. For sure. I think in reference to the ups and down challenges for each age group developmentally, then their peer groups, how it's matching up, the school settings, how they're changing settings, how the classroom settings are changing, the type of school setting that you're placing them in, you know what I mean? It's now balanced between whether homeschooling and, going to traditional schooling, charter schools as opposed to public schools, private, boom. There's just this package of things. And I remember and I have to admit, I had a 10-year-old, right? And then I had another baby, right? So a 10-year gap before I had my next one. And I remember my biggest concern was the fact whether children, having a child again and thinking about that, what school, like, and getting them into the school. And is it the right environment, right? Is it the right educational style for my child? Like, I started off on a Montessori, but then we got into a public, a charter school kind of teaching style, more project based. But at the same time, it's been one of those things where the fear was like real, that I remembered it again 10 years later, that I was like, but then the school my daughter was going to had sibling, right. So it kind of gave us the opportunity to slide her in and much easier. But there's so many parents that just don't have those opportunities, and so really trying to find these ways that you can balance the emotions of being a parent and then at the same time the responsibilities in all the different sets, whether it's folding the clothes or it's having the conversation or it's figuring out the friends, or whatever it may be. I think there's a lot to it. I think also knowing your child, knowing their fears, their anxiety, that there's the reality that they could have anxiety because some parents are like, you're a kid, what if you have anxiety? But you ain't got no responsibilities, you know what I mean? So totally overlooking the fact that you could even have any of these pressing things that you got to remember, we might have dealt with them before and know how it happens, and with this is fresh, this is brand new, this is like you walking into your first job, you know what I mean, ever, and you're like, okay, how do I attack this, And I think a lot of it is predicated on how those elementary years go to really figure out how it's going to stack from there, to be honest with you. And I think that when we're talking about children needing IEPs or not needing IEPs, or whether they're having behavior, whatever the case may be, I think it's just we've neglected a lot of it for too long, you know what I mean? And it's not necessarily that we don't have the knowledge base or the skill base, we don't have the people, you know what I mean? And we don't give teachers, I think, enough in that professional realm on when we're talking about pay that really is going to make it not as so much turnaround, because I realize in the school setting, you're seeing the teacher go and move in, whatever the case may be. And it just that even, you have one teacher, my daughter had one teacher at the beginning of the year. By like 3 months in, you got all settled into her as a new teacher, and so now she's trying to figure out, a different teacher. And so that in itself was kind of awkward too, because I had already wrote all my beginning of the year emails, you know what I mean? Thought I was doing something.
Yeah.
Then it was a new lady, and I'm like, oh God, well, did she tell you? Did she send you the email? And so it's been one of those things where I think also they've been teachers have been looking at the pandemic as well. And, because I feel like sometimes you yourself get short in reference to their abilities. You know what I mean? Not that you overload them with the information and just, I know the curriculum bases are a little crazy and a little overloaded because of the time frame that they have to do them in. You know what I mean? They have to keep going, but I think that it is one of those things where you have to recognize the different learning styles within the different in the rooms, and how can you address that all the time? You know what I mean? Are you really
Totally.
having three teachers in the room with the three different skills, you know what I mean, to be able to deliver that? And I think some of the things like arts and music and things like that some kids are really good in and could learn through those realms, are being taken out of schools, and so it's hard to get that art therapy aspect of things as well into play. So
Totally.
over time, hopefully.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought multiple intelligences into the conversation, because it is hard as a teacher to account for, but I feel like with research we have found that most lessons are designed to have visual, auditory, some type of kinesthetic for the elementary age typically, and then in high school they are typically learning through experience. But at the same time, so responsibility that could be really great set for parents to help children is to show them a diagram of the multiple intelligences and really figuring out how they best learn. So, for instance, a lot of kids learn best through song and dance. So, like, you could help them when they're studying for a test to be like, okay, come up with a rap, come up with a song, and learn
There
your
you go.
states that way, right?
There you go.
But
Yep.
I mean, and the diagram shows it. You have your audio, right? You have your musical intelligence, right? You have your artistic intelligence. I mean, different zones. But if you literally just type into Google, there's awesome charts that are so great that will show you the pie graph. Yeah, Daria, you and I are always looking
Right.
at graphs and pie
Oh,
graphs.
at graphs and stuff, right? But also, you know what? I was thinking about, as you're talking about the old school, I don't know if you remember this, but Electric Company, okay? Back in the day, great s- show, which was all education, but at the same time they'd put,
PBS, right?
the sounds. Yeah, exactly. PBS, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they put the sounds in play. But, they take a lot of these things out of, the rotation. And so then it's like us old school people looking them up online again and stuff like that. But, conjunction, junction, what's your function?
Oh,
What,
yeah.
these things
Full
stuck,
House rock.
because they use the jingle thought process. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And that
Yeah.
is like, hey, yo, if I got to call back on it, you know what I mean? Some people will even, you go through the ABCs, you don't say A, B, C. No,
Yeah.
you go A, B, C, D,
Yeah.
because you, just to
Yes, you
figure out, wait, what's
do.
the
You're
one
right.
after? And, you know, so
You're
you got to
absolutely
recognize
right.
that those are good. And that's how they grab us marketing wise too,
Yeah.
because that's a lot of how our brains function, is being able to have that visual, all these different kind of stimuli in this one place, but at the same time the doing is key. And I think in the classroom the doing, it should be obviously heavy weighted with, in tandem, taking into consideration how arts, music, other therapies can even gym, you know what I mean, can bring these things into play.
And
I
maybe it is a kid, you're right. Maybe it is a kid who needs to, like, when they're studying for their math test, needs to be doing the jumping jacks while they're at
exactly
home, and
exactly
they have, and Daria, a lot of these kids, right, they are sitting. So I just went to the eye doctor on whatever, this whole week's blur, but when I was sitting there waiting, I read the same chart shows how much time. So adults are at 9 hours average. So I was like, wait a minute, the workday is 8 hours. So then account for that nine. And
yeah
what, remember we talk about average bell shape is the
mm-hmm.
top of the peak, which means you got some unders and you got some overs,
Some
right?
overs. Yep.
So
Yep.
overs is going to be right around that 10, 11, maybe. We don't know, but we know that the 9 is average, which tells you. And then for children, we are at 4. It was about 4 hours average. Now, the
Got you.
pediatrician's office, when I just had that well check, we're having that discussion. Okay, we went from a half an hour to find, okay, we understand that the world has got to an hour. This is coming
Right.
from. So these discrepancies that are occurring tell how much sit down time kids are having in front of computers. So they're
Hello.
clearly learning through the computer even at school, and then they want their devices and their gadgets after. But that's probably not the primary way we are able to learn, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally. Like I think in reference to ways to learn, I think I bring up like all these different types, but then also thinking of the individuals that are dealing with mental health issues at the same time or family settings at the same time, and I think it's um, definitely something where the school systems have to also take bigger a bigger thought process in how they're going to attack some of the mental health things that come from even just sitting in that isolated spot for so long and trying to get through like, oh my God, and I don't know the answer to this thing and I'm about to break down and the anxiety that's killing me right now, or I don't know these, or I just didn't have the time, or my mom and dad were arguing. And I ain't had, I can't even focus. You know what I mean? My sister's driving me crazy, whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? There's just so much going on the outside in tandem with then now this seated isolated spot and that some kids need to be moving and doing, I think how that can, being constricted and not taking those things into consideration, which now my daughter has like I think 3 4 recesses, so I'm like, I would go to class, but at the same time they're doing stuff outside or whatever the case may be, the nature aspects of things and stuff like that. But I think that is important to the uplift of the day. I think we're in our office settings, we take in that consideration. I mean, look, we put plants around, we try to put, a lot of lighting inside buildings. In our offices, we try to keep light colors, just to kind of keep some uplift in these places that we have to just stay in play for a duration of time. And I think that you have to have all of the mental restraints, you know what I mean, in play, and to expect this when I at 4 to 5, yes, I put out there, have honestly, you know what I mean, have times where things pull me another direction. You know what I mean? So I think taking in consideration the mental health care of each one of these children as through at the same time, which means just getting also this guidance department, you know, a little bit stronger outside of just maybe the academic guidance, you know what I mean? But then also the getting the school psychologist and not expecting the nurse to do it, you know what I mean? And trying to get a real hold on with people that have the ability to make change in and have the skill sets, you know what I mean? Because it's not easy to say, oh, get like let's say conflict resolution scenarios, you know what I mean, to get two kids to get onto the same page. How are you going to do that? Well, I would need somebody to give me a course to do so, you know what I mean? And so getting somebody certified in these type of things within the school systems, to be able to balance some of the mental health stuff, which we could put that into the behavioral end of things a lot of the times, because when you can't control it, you just do, you know what I mean? And so at the end of the day, I think it's important, but then also there's a stigma with the mental health aspect of things that we're talking about in maybe some of the minority communities. You know what I mean? And trying to reduce the stigma of even going to the school psychologist. Like, you going to talk to who? You know what I mean? Like, to leave your classroom and go say, I'm going to talk to the school psychologist, right? Whether it be the teacher you're telling or additionally the rest of the kids. Like, you know what I mean? It ain't going to be always that bad. Or if somebody sees you in the classroom sitting outside of her office, now if you got to sit outside the office, you are already looking like you're going to be waiting for her. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where, okay, well, everybody's going to know I have an issue because I'm sitting outside. You know what I mean? And so there's got to be some kind of other ways that they can get this side help. We've always said, oh, well, the after school program, maybe, you know what I mean, or something like that can kind of balance some of these things out. And some of those places, are becoming just babysitting locations. So I think that getting more early intervention in play too, because my daughter I was realizing she was having reading issues, letter recognition, situations. They didn't want to test her because she was only 6. They don't like to put a label on it. I'm like, I'm not asking for a label. I just want to know what the heck's wrong. I just tell me all the little things that she's having that need to be tweaked, right? And let me address them. And we don't have to worry about labels. You know what I mean? So I think that is also an issue when you're talking about, okay, if I go to here, how does that change the route, or what is going on? Why do they know and I don't know? Also, is how the parent addresses it, right? Like, don't tell me about my child. What do you mean? And sometimes that's just the pride. And so I
It
think
is
there's
hard.
so many challenges to take
It
into
is a lot of
consideration.
challenges. But I think if we remind parents, like, you know, uh,
Yeah.
first of all, IEPs are individualized evaluation plans, and they're designed to help support the child. I mean, when I was in the classroom, you had kids who needed to be closer to the board, and you did that at practice. But there are some children who need that for 100%, and that has to be in the plan. And so, I think it's important to remind our parents and families that really bridging the gap of what child needs. And I always say, trust your parenting gut. And I said this yesterday. I said, you will always be your child's first and foremost teacher
Yes,
throughout
exactly.
throughout life,
Exactly.
throughout being an adult child.
Doesn't make a difference.
It doesn't, like, even when you go through the adolescent years when they hate your guts, but you're still the primary.
13 to 25. 13 to
Oh my
25.
gosh.
Right?
Oh my gosh. You're still that primary teacher for the rest of their lives. And I know, and I am sure you hear this a lot too, Dart. Like, you may have a different way you want to show how to do and then, like, my teacher didn't do it that way. And I was like, yeah. I used to get that dialogue a lot, right? They come
Are
up to the
you
conferences,
kidding
and
me?
I had NASA
Daily.
scientists on board, right? And they would say to
Didn't
me,
matter.
"Lonnie, no, they want the Miss Kumar way of teaching math." And I was like,
Yeah,
"Dad,
they
you gotta,
want it. Yeah,
right?"
pickle math. Pickle math. And I was like,
I have no
what?
clue. Yeah, what?
Yeah. And so it's a whole new way of just doing plus and minus, right? And I'm like, okay. And it looks like it's algebra at the end of the day.
Oh my
But
god.
hey, they're
No,
getting them
no,
ready for the
no,
algebra brain maybe early. I don't know.
I'm gonna look this up.
I gotta learn. We gotta get somebody on that. I know.
I need to look. I'm really gonna look. I've not heard of this pickle math before. I've
Oh,
heard of
pickle math. Oh, I gotta show you.
Oh my
Oh yeah, I've learned it now. It's mind you, this is year 2 because year 1 I was like, what? Right, and I didn't even try because she just shut me down, just like you're talking about. Like, we don't do it that way, and I'm like moving right along. And this year, I now see her doing it without any problem, and now she's saying like, oh yeah, mom, this pickle. And I'm like, oh, it does
yes.
look like a pickle. I mean, good, but it's definitely like what? Add,
So I'm so glad you said that, Daria. You came on board. You're coming on board. So this is the thing we have to do. We have to embrace the ways
this is it.
too, and you can politely and gently tell your child, like, this is the way I would love to show you. And if they say no to you, then ask a way that they'll let you show them. Maybe it's on the dry erase board. Maybe it's when you go outside at the ice cream shop. I'm
Exactly.
not saying it needs to be bribery. I'm just saying give them alternatives for choice, but make sure you still are not giving up on the way that you learned so that they can bridge the connection that you had your own school experiences. They're having their own, and then bridging and finding that happy medium. Because to be honest with you, what goes around comes around. The method that we all learned under is still being used. It's just there are a lot of other curriculums in place. So
Yep.
I use this dialogue a lot
2
too.
+ 2 is 4.
Exactly. Thank you. And
Doesn't
so
matter how you get there, but it is. Yeah.
how you get there. And so just remind yourself, just because they're learning this new way and I say it all the time. Like I just said, I don't know what pickle math is, but obviously if she brings it home, I am going to have to learn what that is too. But I will also show her my way of showing regrouping.
That's it.
And
Right.
so
Right.
too bad, so sad you're gonna sit down and learn it. But I mean, I don't
Right.
that's the
No,
force.
no, I totally agree. I think getting them to listen to you is trying to get them to additionally just open their span, you know what I mean? And not be too
Totally.
linear, you know what I mean? That there are other ways to doing things like, yes, like we said, 2 + 2 is 4, but how I get there, you know what I mean? And whether I'm putting 3 and 4, or whatever, how I'm doing it, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, I think having that little back and forth push to things and letting him try to see things, I think is important. But I granted not to shut them down so they don't do their homework because I got that one. She'll use it as an advantage. Like, I don't know what I'm doing then. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, just kidding. Do your thing, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think us, like you're saying, having this meet in the middle understanding of things and really knowing that, and also like when they get to their, if you teach them your way, sometimes I remember like she gets to her test and now she's doing it my way and that way, and now we ain't got no way because we've tried to push it in. But um I think seeing the differences is okay too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah,
I'm glad you
yeah,
said that. There's a fine line
mhm,
of that confusion.
right,
So
yeah,
I do think we as the adults do have to give a little bit into whatever system they're using, but like at the same time, go there. I think we've forgotten when we get in this role of how to share our experiences because it's been so
hmm
long that we've all been in school. And so to bridging the gap of I hated math class too, like start exposing them to who you were. But
that's it.
I,
I
but
tell him,
I,
I'm like, I had a reading problem myself. Like
yeah,
I can see it because I dealt with it, not
yeah,
because I'm just being judgmental. You know what I mean?
no,
It's like I already know. I go in telling even the teacher that too, to be clear, right? So that they have some baseline of like, okay, you know, um, I'm not just pulling these things, even if it, because my thing is about coping skills and confidence. I
totally.
don't care if you get an A. I don't care if you're a C, don't want you getting too low because it's like, are you doing it? But at the
Mhm.
same time, I think that in reference to if you're trying, you know what I mean? And I see that, and then
Effort.
you're building coping skills, and
Yes,
then
I agree.
additionally, you've got keeping your confidence in play. Because somebody comes and swipes their confidence, they'd have what? And a lot of us think because we have a name, right? Like I'm the Fernandez, right? That we're grounded, or our kids are grounded in that. And the reality of the situation is they got to know all of that to know what they're grounded in. So they need to know the bad, the good, and the ugly in reference to who you are and what you've gone through, you know what I mean? So that they can see, okay, when they're running through some of these things that either there is another side, that they'll get through, you know what I mean? But then also maybe even how to get through in reference to that coping aspect. But I think that comes with, when we're talking about mental health, you could put a life coaches in there. You could put, you don't have to have the psychologist up in there. You know what I mean? Even or if they're just have little pods of life coaches that can create things. Because I've been one to always say, come out of the womb, right? And you need a PCP and a life coach. We kill some of this mental health scenario, right? And the PCP, obviously, we didn't need that for the baseline. But I think it's key to recognize how we can use some of these industries that are coming awry, as opposed to seeing them flying their names up on in social media and things like that. We could be using them in the school settings if we
I
approach it
100%
appropriately.
agree.
You know what I mean? It doesn't make a sense because some of the things what we do, for older people, like the wellness check, where we're going to different dimensions of your life. You know what I mean? Why shouldn't the kids start doing that early on? Because how are we getting to make them well-rounded if we're not looking at all of them? You know what I mean? We're like, oh, Johnny doesn't have any friends. You know what I mean? But Johnny has this and that and bump and bump. And yeah, he needs to increase in that area. But does Johnny even know? Like there's so many things that, also one can cause issues in the other, right? Like subliminally, how we think about things, right, is going to affect, well, okay, emotions and how we act and how we feel, and then our behaviors. And then we got habits going on and wondering why we're doing things, you know?
Right.
So I think it's really key for us to figure out how to have the dialogue within the household, but then also for us to be involved enough in the schools, like PTA wise, I guess, but changing the face of the PTA. I think the reason why nobody's there joining the PTA because it's got an ugly like face for some reason, you know what I mean, over the years. So, but like I think the need for the parent in the PTA meeting is to try to make sure that some of the values that we got at home are being instilled in the school system as well. You know what I mean? And to be open about things. I mean, the one thing about it is when we're talking about this LGBT and the change and the, you know, transgenders and all this different stuff, you know what I mean? If we're not talking about having a therapist, psychologist, somebody in there, you know what I'm saying, for these people to have some place to have these conversations. You know what I mean? Because the thing about it is they're human. This is not because what are they choosing in their bedroom? It's nothing to do, right, with them being human or not, right? A title that's on, it's at the end of the day, it's trying to figure out what is specifically are they dealing with, and not to change them, to make them love them. You know what I mean? Because that's half the battle is the loving yourself. So I think that, you know, when we're talking about different things, my big area definitely is mental health aspects of things and having like a high quality mental health care system kind of in each one of our ecosystems in different communities, but then also having like an improved communication and transparency, like push, you know, when it comes to mental health support, and also how we do it on a wider school, you know, community span, and then how we can also implement and integrate like um, um, different evidence-based approaches, you know, to social emotional, and also mental health well-being. Like I think those are three things that we really need to figure out how we can bring them back in. And there was such a push for arts and music and gym classes getting pushed back in there, these are places that we can put those and do it at the same time, you know, in my perspective, especially when we're talking about the therapy that comes with these. Like we've always talked about people even just being part of a team and what that brings as being part of a team. You know what I mean? And I don't care, it might be the computer group team, you know what I mean? Or something like that. But at the same time, you know, focusing on the interests of the children, you know what I mean? At the same time, you can just like create stuff. But, and then also the schools being more project based, you know, so the transitions out of school are a little bit smoother as well. So lots
Totally.
of stuff to be taught and needing to talk about.
Lots. But I do love the fact that you brought up PTA involvement. I know it's a lot for how busy schedules are with work and with sports and with all, but joining the PTA is one way of having this liaison, which is really, really important, and also helps you be aware of events. And the PTA in general is really looking at a reorganization of realizing how many parents are working but want to be involved with the child's school, um, and especially sometimes for communication for middle school and high school, where oftentimes your child may not tell you what's going on. It'll be one way you can get dissemination of information. So those of you who have
Yeah,
that age group, um, and then even the college years where you may not always know what's happening to your child, you can, you know, it's just a different conversation, but you can always, they're a little bit more open to talking about their stress at that time. So you could just ask them what their game plan is, or asking those open-ended questions. And how was your day is such a deep loaded question. We all are used to like it was fine, right? And then you can
right,
see the
right.
tugging of the shoulders and asking it, but then later, later finding out talking about body language, you said, I noticed that your shoulders shrugged when I asked you. I'm just curious if something really got to you today. And also waiting for openings, because oftentimes the back of the car when you're driving somewhere, especially for adolescents who don't want to make eye contact with you a lot, you can use the back of the car for conversations. But don't give up when they just, and don't be just like checkbox, like, oh, I asked about their day. Because here's the
Yeah.
thing, we do have to go deeper with our children. That's exactly what therapy is. You just go deeper. And coaching, right,
Mhm.
Daria? What do we do in coaching? We go
Yeah,
deeper with questions.
totally.
So
Right.
you just have to go deeper, and it's not that you have to do it at one time, right?
I was about to say the takeaway comes maybe a little bit later down the road with
Yes,
teenagers. You know what I mean? But
yes,
right, exactly, being patient with it and recognizing that I think like what you said earlier, that transparency that you deliver will kind of roll out and offer them a little bit more space in reference to how they interact with you. But I think there's some reality in remembering you and who you were as a teen, you
yeah,
know, and remembering those years and the feelings and being real about your child could go through the same. And remember being, you know, I think more intentional about, okay, not just like you're saying, not just saying, well, how was your day, but specifically, oh, so how did the test go? Did you freak out? You know what I mean? Like to open the conversation, knowing that, like my daughter, she deals with a little bit of anxiety, especially obviously tests. I remember when, you know what I mean? And so there's this whole thing of like, okay, so were you hot? You know,
yeah,
did you finish? Yeah, so, you know, like did you, what did you, you know, and trying to find the silver lining in a moment that probably wasn't the best part of the day, but it was something that then she could release the conversation, get it off. You know what I mean? And be okay with it. You know what I mean? And sometimes I'll put out there, you know, something that is a feeling that maybe I didn't have like recently, but I know it's a feeling, you know what I mean, that can come awry and just to see how she says, well, that's not me, man. I don't do that. You know what I mean? Because it then lets me understand, okay, well, where are you at? You know what I mean? Because, and usually I'm saying it because I'm felt it or something, you know? So all in all, I think
totally.
there's plenty to talk about in this area.
There's
And I think
always plenty.
getting resources out there.
Totally. So, real quick before we wrap up, there are always just if you really look up different topics in the, I just love Google, right? But one of them is the Center for Disease Control, CDC, has a whole parenting engagement piece for suggestions. Want to remind you all as October comes up, try to find a way to get to that parent conference or at least ask for a phone call if you can't make it in person. Really, really critical time to connect with your child's teacher. And you can always, it is your right to request conferences throughout the year, um, especially if you have a child that you are worried about. And they are, if there is some struggling issues for sure. And use the resources that your child's teacher provides to do those check-ins.
Right,
Really,
right.
really
And
important. Yeah, sorry, Dee, my computer's lagging. Go ahead. What were you saying?
no, no, I was just saying, yeah, no, like you're saying, these resources and actually starting to look up some things. Like I was looking into the American Academy of Pediatrics, and I was surprised at the things that they had in there. Additionally, American Academy of Children and Adolescent Psychiatry, also Children's Hospital Association, the National State of Emergency in Children's Mental Health. Not that your kid is to that extent, but yeah, they clearly deal with the higher end of spectrum. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But at the same time, it
totally.
speaks to this the basic and letting you know what's normal, what's not normal. And then there was even a amazing checklist as well. Also, they have information about racial and economic disparities, which was big in reference to getting an understanding of. So I think that we should definitely post these different resources up for um, uh, everybody to kind of grab onto on our different websites. You know, you can always go to pauseforamoment.com. Additionally, you know, Dia Life and Holistic Life as well. And I think we should make sure that people are just getting the resources, but we'll put it also in our different social media pods as well, just to make sure that you have that information. Don't feel so hopeless in the moment. But we do thank you for joining us for this moment of, basically lighting up your life, hopefully to some extent, with our giggles and crazy, but at the same time, the information that you can gain from this type of podcast. And Arti has started out an amazing journey last year, and so I'm just all excited for the year to come. So blessings to all of you, and we will see you next Friday at 11. And hopefully we will have less technical difficulties.
Yes.
Back
Have
to
a great
you.
day, everyone. Thanks, Daria.
God bless you. Take care.
All right. Take care.